While for Scotland and Northern Ireland following a damp start to the day. Fresher in the far northwest, but otherwise mid to high teens for many, although it will be increasingly damp for Northern England and North Wales during the afternoon. And then that rain pushes south during Friday night. It weakens and fragments, so mainly just light on and off rain by the early hours of Saturday, and then it clears in time for the weekend. Drier and clearer weather for many. Perhaps a chilly feel first thing for sheltered parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. Temperatures in places down to the mid to low single figures. But a bright start for many. There'll be some mist around western and southern coasts, and there'll be some thicker cloud, I think, for central and southern Scotland, as well as parts of northern and eastern England. A few showers here, but for the vast majority, Saturday's looking dry, bright and warm. Low 20s in the south, mid to high teens further north, similar on Sunday.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as the polls close, we'll bring you the latest analysis on the most important local elections in a generation. Plus, it's an unmissable night of unfiltered opinion with social media sensation Zuby, plus political firebrand Anne Widdecombe. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along to tonight's Mark Steyn show. The polls are open for another 2 hours, which means I can't say anything worth saying about the elections, and I don't want to run boring footage of party leaders casting their votes for the next hour. So we have some real news for you. How about that? While we were all yakking about Cakegate and Ginger Growlergate, a truly horrifying national scandal has been brewing. We'll tell you all about that. Oh, and the indestructible rocker Ted Nugent is coming up to take your mind off the Lib Dems and the Shinners and the rest of that woeful gang. All that, plus the most vital part of the show, all the more important when we live in the constant swirl of a blizzard of lies. Your comments and questions, do send them along by email to gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. But first, as ever, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. The top story today, the Bank of England even has raised its interest rate to 1% from 0.75% today. It's the fourth rise in a row and the highest the base rate has been since early 2009. The Monetary Policy Committee is trying to calm inflation, which it forecasts will peak at over 10% this year. The banks also warn the economy is set to shrink next year by 0.25%. Matt Dromfield is head of Debt Free London.
Many people think that you go into debt because you've splurged on a credit card or you've overspent on the weekend and not realise it. That's really not the situation whatsoever. Debt doesn't discriminate. We're all facing a cost of living crisis with the cost of your mortgage maybe going up later today, depending on the Bank of England's announcement, your rent going up, your food going up. All these are essential costs that you can't control and you're left with nothing at the end of the month.
Well, in news away from home, Russia says it's still willing to provide a safe passage for civilians from the steelworks in the besieged Ukrainian port city of Mariupol. Speaking to Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, the Russian President Vladimir Putin says Kyiv should order Ukrainian fighters still in the plant to come out and surrender. Ukrainian officials are warning Russia may step up its offensive before the 9th of May, when Moscow will be commemorating the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany during World War II. Japan and the UK have today agreed a landmark defence deal as the two countries address ways to put pressure on Russia. During a meeting in London today, Boris Johnson and Fumio Kishida have said the pact will allow forces to deploy together to carry out joint exercises and offer humanitarian relief. Japan also announced a wave of new sanctions against the Kremlin. This is Mr. Kishida's first official visit to the UK and as such was marked with an RAF fly past. News just in, and thousands of jobs are at risk as one of Britain's largest convenience store chains might collapse. McColl's retail group, which has an extensive partnership with the supermarket Morrisons, employs around 16,000 workers. The group says unless a financial solution is found in the short term, it's increasingly likely it will be placed into administration. And as you've been hearing throughout the day here on GB News, the Justice Secretary says the parole board needs fundamentally overhauling after it rejected his bid to keep the mother of baby P inside jail. Tracy Connolly was convicted in 2009 for causing or allowing the death of her 17-month-old baby boy. She could be freed within weeks. Dominic Raab condemned the decision, arguing it was proof the parole system needed change. The World Health Organization says 15 million people have died globally from COVID-19 or as an indirect result of the pandemic. And that includes people who couldn't access health care for other conditions while services were overwhelmed. The number is 3 times higher than the official tally, the UN body believing many countries initially undercounted the number of deaths. That's it on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. Election day. To be honest, I kind of feel politics has gotten a bit peripheral in the COVID era. The state has implemented entirely insane public health policies, and all the opposition do is insist that the policies are not yet sufficiently insane. There have been very real consequences to this madness. So first, a postscript to what we were talking about last night with Christopher Chope, the strange politicised determination to deny justice or even acknowledgement to the thousands of people who are dead because they took a vaccine. I referred to a BBC presenter who had died from an adverse effect of the vaccine. That's the coroner's verdict, so you should be able to talk about that even on British TV. I neglected to mention her name, and I should have. She was Lisa Shaw, 44 and perfectly healthy, of BBC Radio Newcastle. And as I said to Sir Christopher, even the BBC memory hold her. She was a friend. They sat next to her day after day. But her fate is inconvenient to the narrative. Normally, if a celebrity dies of something new, it shines a spotlight on it, like Liberace and Rock Hudson being among the first victims of AIDS. Instead, 99% of the only media most people ever see are content to be propagandists, even as their own colleagues join the ranks of the dead. Anyway, after the show, I chanced to see this from a lady whose Twitter handle is Vicky Spit, widowed at 38 by the AstraZeneca vaccine. That's pretty awful. It was 1 year ago today that Vicky's husband got the jab that ended his life. She would have liked to reflect further on her loss, but fortunately for all you groupthink follow the science zombies, Twitter swung into action. Quote, families of people who died after taking COVID vaccine ignored as zero compensation payouts made, and then a link to a story in The Independent. That's all Vicky did. As you can see, the shock troops of Twitter leapt instantly into the fray to label the tweet as misleading. I don't know why. Coroners have ruled a significant number of deaths due to COVID vaccines. That's a fact. And Her Majesty's government hasn't paid threepence halfpenny in compensation. That's also a fact. But for some reason, Twitter enjoys traumatising widows. So it falsely labels the tweet misleading and declares this tweet can't be replied to, shared or liked. Why ever not? Well, because Twitter's woke-talitarians apparently enjoy doing this sort of thing. It's not enough that you're widowed. It's not enough that you're marking the first anniversary of the event that cost your husband's life. You also have to be beaten up by the ever more censorious Twitter enforcers. It's not just that your husband's dead, it's that his death contradicts the media groupthink. So one more tweet from Vicky. Let's take a look at this. Quote, my Twitter account has been locked for sharing a news article in The Independent in which I was one of the interviewed people. My life is apparently misleading information. That's right. Your life, your loss, your widowhood is, quote, misleading, so you have to be silenced. Not on GBNews, not on this show. Vicky Spit joins me now. It's terrific to see you, Vicky. This must have been a tough day for you because Zion, he's mononymous according to his passport. It's like Lulu or Sting.
I have to correct you. It's pronounced Zion. Otherwise, he'll be quite angry. Zion, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was so focused on the fact that even in a British passport, he only had one name. But as I said, just like all these pop stars. But it must have been a tough. He just went off for what he assumed would be a routine vaccine shot, and then in the days afterwards, he was just in more and more pain from it.
Yes, he had the vaccine. So a year ago today at 3:30, to be precise. And I jokingly asked him when he got back in the car if he'd gotten a sticker, which he said he hadn't. And he was fine for a few days. And then I believe it was 8 days after the vaccine, he developed a very, very bad headache. And within 2 weeks, he was in Newcastle Infirmary and he had been declared dead from vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. It's actually in the same ward as Lisa Shaw, who died 2 days later.
And he was, you said on your tweet that you're 38. I take it he was roughly around the same age there. So he was a perfectly healthy. Okay, so he's a perfectly healthy middle-aged guy, not yet 50.
Extremely healthy.
Did he have any feeling?
He didn't drink.
Yeah, did he have any qualms about taking the vaccine? Because he didn't need to. Well, he didn't need to take it for medical reasons. He was 48, healthy, didn't smoke, didn't drink. If he'd got the COVID, he had a 99.9999% chance of surviving it. But somehow he thought the vaccine was safe, and he went and got it anyway.
at the time, everything we were being told from every angle was that getting the vaccine would stop you getting and spreading COVID. And Z was not all worried about getting COVID, but he didn't want to inadvertently give it to someone who was vulnerable and be responsible for them becoming seriously ill or even dying. That was why he got the vaccine. As it turns out, it doesn't stop you getting or spreading COVID.
No, that's true. Knowing what we now know, that people who get the vaccine still get infected and they're still contagious and pass it on to other people, and they still wind up in hospital and they still die. Are you resentful of what you were told last year when everybody was getting vaccinated?
I don't think we can actually broadcast how I feel about what we were told last year.
And how do you feel about the state, the same state that insisted that everyone, whether they're 112 or they're 3, needs to get jabbed? That same state doesn't seem to be in the least bit interested when the jab winds up killing people.
They aren't in the slightest bit interested. They keep telling us they've got the vaccine damage payment scheme, but not one single person who's been bereaved or injured by the COVID vaccines has received a penny, as you know. And they didn't even start requesting medical records until March this year. And some of the people died over a year ago and have death certificates and coroner's reports from over a year ago. And not one single person has received any help, which is why we think the scheme is not fit for purpose, and there should be a bespoke compensation scheme specifically for the COVID-19 vaccines. After all, this pandemic was a novel illness. They rushed out new vaccines for it, so therefore I think they should rush out a new compensation scheme for it.
Yes, it's very interesting. They can rush out the vaccine and they can bypass all the usual procedures, safety procedures, just to get it out there and start putting it into people's arms. And yet when it comes to the consequences of that, such as the death of Zion, they wait for a year and a half. I mean, the first deaths began shortly after the first vaccines, and those people haven't received a penny. Are you surprised at the media's lack of interest in this? I mentioned earlier that even the BBC... Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I am. It's disgusting. I started doing media on this a couple of months after Z died, purely because I couldn't stand the idea of people having these vaccines and not being aware of the potential side effects. Now, you know, most people don't have dangerous side effects. That's fine. I accept that. That's perfectly true. But people need to know what the dangerous side effects could be if they had the vaccine. It's like, especially when they were rolling it out for young people, like 18-year-olds, if they had the vaccine on a Monday, went out drinking on a Saturday and had a terrible headache on a Sunday, they might just put it down to being hungover when they might actually be having a bleed on the brain. So I wanted people to know, to be aware what the side effects could possibly be. Now, every single interview I did was edited, and had an expert coming on after me to say the vaccines were completely safe. And it just was kicking the guts
really,
over and over again.
Yeah, that's really quite disgraceful from the UK media on that, because the point is they're saying you need this to keep your job. You need this if you work in certain professions. You need this to go to a restaurant. You need this to go to a West End show, to a concert. You need this if you want to go and lie on a beach in Spain. So they're basically making people have medical interventions that they don't actually need. Zion didn't need it, but you need it to move around the country. So this actually is a public scandal. Are you concerned at the way the media and the politicians seem to be just covering it up?
I'm absolutely disgusted at the way it's been covered up. I don't know if you saw the turnout when Trump had this 10-minute ruling. It was disgusting. There were 5 people in Commons at the time. You know, I'm getting very flustered and upset about it. It is extremely upsetting. Our family members died and been severely injured. Families have been ruined. Children have been left without fathers. and mothers, and we're just being completely ignored. We did the right thing. We did it what we thought was the right thing to do for the good of the country, for the good of our friends and families and neighbours. And then we're just left hung out to dry, gaslighted, constantly lied to, ignored, even blocked by some MPs on Twitter. We asked them too many questions. It is horrendous.
No, and it's absolutely disgraceful the way that wigless twit of a speaker is using process objections to shut down the only member in the House of Commons who seems to want to do anything about this. He said there are thousands of people in your situation, Vicky, and we're going to let them tell their stories, because this shouldn't have happened. It's a public disgrace, and the fact that the government, because it can't admit it was wrong, will not compensate you for your loss is quite disgusting. Thank you very much for joining us, especially on this, what for you is a painful anniversary for a young woman. You'd been with Xeon since you were teenagers, as I understand it.
I was 17,
and the idea that, since you were 17, and thanks to this vaccine, you've been without him for a year. It's absolutely terrible. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us, Vicky. As I understand it, in most jurisdictions, no, thank you, Vicky. In most jurisdictions, a vaccine is meant to have a fatality rate lower than 1 in a million. If it's higher than that, it's back to the drawing board, because a vaccine isn't a treatment. It's a formula that is meant to prevent certain things. As we now know, these COVID vaccines don't prevent you getting the vaccine or spreading the vaccine. But let's take that number. As I said, it's across most jurisdictions. 1 in a million, and it's back to the drawing board. So in the United Kingdom, there should be 67 dead. Yet, as Christopher Chope said on yesterday's show, just on the official and likely understated numbers, there are already over 2,000 dead, or 30 times higher than what it should be. Just on Sir Christopher's numbers, that's 5 a day, officially. So there are a lot of vaccine widows. Among them is my next guest. Her husband was a doctor, Stephen Wright, and he was 32 years old. 32 years old. That's no age to leave a young wife and 2 small boys, aged 7 and 1. We did ask AstraZeneca if they had a response to the facts of Stephen Wright's death, and they have not got back to us. But we did ask them. Dr. Wright's widow, Charlotte, joins me now. This was must have been absolutely devastating to you, because your husband was 32. He was fit and healthy. He was working in the medical system, and yet it all went downhill for him. He was one of the first to be vaccinated, I think, and it all went downhill for him very quickly.
About 10 days after the first dose of AstraZeneca, he started having symptoms 9 days after, and he died on day 10. And
actually within hours of just going to hospital, it wasn't long. I think the last text he'd sent was to you, telling him not to worry his mother by telling him that he'd gone into the hospital. That's your young son there that we're looking at now. So you've had a year and a half now as a single mum that you would surely never have expected to have at your age. Have you rethought your views on the vaccine and why people should get it and all that kind of thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like if you make the decision to go and get it, then you should be informed. You should have all the relevant information, and it's not available. It's not being shared. So yeah, my views on vaccination have changed personally, because I don't believe they're telling us everything they need to.
You know that the way it works is that even if you're getting a relatively simple headache pill or whatever, they will say do not take if you're pregnant, or do not take if you have a hernia, or do not take this, that and the other. These things were rushed out as a kind of general government program. And so all the things that your husband would have known when prescribing other drugs and medications didn't come into play here. People were just told it's safe, it's 95% effective, go and stand in the queue and get jabbed today.
Well, exactly. I'll just correct you that he didn't prescribe anything. He was a clinical psychologist, so mental health. But exactly that, we didn't know what the adverse reactions were at all. We didn't know what to look out for. I mean, I sure as would have suggested that he go straight to the doctor, because he woke up with a severe headache. He's never had that before. We both never had a migraine. We didn't know what that felt like. So had we had any information whatsoever, then he would have gone straight to the hospital, and things could have been different.
Now, you spoke to a hematologist who told you that your husband was likely the first person to have died from the vaccine in the UK and possibly the world. I don't actually think that can be true. As we know, there are far more deaths than were reported at the time. But you've been given basically the same runaround as Vicky and everybody else had. Your husband was just about to start a new job at Great Ormond Street Hospital. So that's a well remunerated job. He had a young family to support, and yet for the last year and a half now, you've been a single mum raising 2 kids on your own. How do you feel about the government just leaving you, hanging you out there like that?
Well, I was told by the haematologist that he is possibly the first to die in the UK. I think that the government have just left us and everyone else to it. It's precisely why we have taken it upon ourselves to start our own campaigning. We, as a collective under Sarah Moore, Solicitors of Hallsfield, we are launching a campaign called VIP UK. It stands for Vaccine Injured Bereaved. We want to have a bespoke compensation scheme, because the vaccine damage payment scheme is not fit for purpose.
Well, you certainly deserve that, because these are extraordinary circumstances. There's never been a situation where the government is telling you you need to get a vaccine in order to travel, in order to keep your job, in order to go to the local curry house, in order to see a James Bond movie, in order to live in the United Kingdom like a normal human being. You have to get these jabs. They didn't mention anything about the side effects. And as we've just seen, if you mention the side effects, Twitter and Facebook and these other totalitarian freaks just shut you down. What does your local member of parliament have to say about all of this?
As far as I'm aware, we've all got the standard holding message from my local MP is Laura Trott. I don't think I got a personalised response from her at all.
And how do you feel when you see what happened? We played a clip of it, of the House of Commons yesterday, where basically Christopher Chope is trying to bring a private member's bill on the victims of the vaccines and their families. And that's getting stonewalled. This is the year and a half since your husband died must seem like an eternity, in which the same government that says we can tell you how many people died of COVID yesterday hasn't actually got an official figure for how many people died of the vaccine.
I mean, I feel hurt and ignored, and I just feel laughed at almost. You know, there are people on their phones, not even listening to him. The speaker just almost being rude to him as he speaks the truth. You know, I feel very hurt by it.
Yeah, he's that speaker, that wigless clod, seemed to think it was all some kind of joke. But it's not a joke. These aren't numbers. These aren't statistics. These are real people who are dead. And that lousy speaker should certainly up his game and at least pretend to take it seriously. We just saw a photograph of your young sons there. I take it the 1-year-old, it's something he can't obviously comprehend and will have very few memories of, and that in itself is a tragedy. How's your 7-year-old coping with this? Because that's really rough when Daddy just goes to hospital and doesn't come back like that.
He's gone through different stages. He was very angry, as was I. I think our main feeling, both of us, is just that we cannot understand why something that was designed to protect us took Daddy, and I can't explain it to him.
No. Well, I hope. In the years ahead that he will come to find some peace about that. And I hope that this rotten government, this rotten state that imposed these insane policies and is still demanding that people get their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th jabs. Doesn't matter whether you're 97 or you're 12, you're supposed to just accept this ludicrous one-size-fits-all vaccine for everybody on the planet. And there are real consequences to that. Well, tell us the name of your group again, VIB UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. VIB. Yep. Vaccine Injured Bereaved. UK. VIB UK. Thank you very much, Charlotte. We're going to stay on this story. It's actually a national disgrace, this. And the groupthink media, the propaganda media, don't help. Let me know what you think. GB Views at GBNews. You can tweet me. Also, we're coming right back with your thoughts on this. Plus, the indestructible rock legend, Ted Nugent, and the indestructible investigative reporter, Natalie Winters. We're coming right back.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's get to your comments. Some Twitter user says, we wanted to know whether we were doing enough to identify and help those who have been injured by the vaccine. And the Twitter user goes, oh, maybe are we doing enough to identify and highlight those that have died because they didn't have the vaccine? You know, we've talked about this over and over, but the brain dead, follow the science zombies. You need to look at the last numbers that were issued, the vaccine surveillance report issued at the beginning of April by the UK Health Security Agency. The overwhelming majority of cases, up to 75, getting close to 80%, are among those who have been jabbed. Jab. And you still get the vaccine. And you still pass on the vaccine. And in fact, the triple vaccinated account for 3/4 of COVID deaths. In the last vaccine surveillance report this government issued, and then it didn't like the way those numbers were off the charts, and so it decided it wouldn't issue its weekly vaccine surveillance report. So you can laugh at this, because I guess it's pretty funny to you. Oh yeah, they took the vaccine and they died, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to you, because take the vaccine, follow the science, must be a good little compliant brain-dead zombie. Look at the numbers in the vaccine surveillance report. This is a national scandal. And the fact that it goes unreported, even in as stupidly over-regulated a media environment as the United Kingdom's, is actually quite disgraceful. So you can laugh at widows. I'm glad that gives you a laugh. Whoop it up, baby. But in the end, the numbers, we've discussed them on this show with statisticians and with doctors. The numbers show that the vaccines are crapola. They start to lose, they wane in effective. Oh, we've got this 90. Well, we've just had a big document dump from Pfizer. Okay, Pfizer didn't kill these two ladies' husbands. That was AstraZeneca. But Pfizer, we've just had a big document dump showing all the things they haven't told us and all the things they had to do to get to these claims of 95% effectiveness. We've had someone from South Africa on talking about how the effectiveness wanes to 20% after a nothing amount of time. I've got some other clever clogs here. Linz Young. Linz Young says he or she mockingly quotes me saying the COVID vaccine doesn't stop you getting the vaccine or spreading the vaccine. I swear on my God's life, that's what he said. Maybe you should get an auto cue like the rest of them. That happens to be a fact, Linz Young. You look it up. You can look it up. You can go look it up at the last COVID surveillance report at the UK Health Security Agency website. We need less groupthink. There's no reason, just because there's a virus on the loose, that we should all fall into line and only have one standard. Oh, that's what he said. Yeah, that's good. I'm already under investigation from Ofcom, so I may be gone by the end of the week. But the fact is, the rate of death in the United Kingdom, even on the figures filed to this vaccine reporting scheme of over 2,000, would be enough pre-COVID to have got this thing recalled. Okay, what are we doing now? Mark says money would be better spent on damaged veterans. No, it doesn't work like that, actually. The stupid government shut down everything. We've had 2 years of weird abnormality in which people have been paid to sit at home and been paid not to do anything and been paid. Well, if you're dead because you believe the propaganda, I think you're entitled to compensation on that. Adrian says, my GP says no help, no research, no treatment, nothing. Won't even test my blood. And another Twitter user says, and what are we going to do about all those still alive because of it, eh? I suppose you have no answer to that. Actually, I do, Mr. Clever Clogsy Twitter twit. It's increasingly clear that if you look at the numbers, and I encourage you to do that, if necessary, call a statistician. You'll get to see a statistician a lot quicker than you'll get to see a GP. You should look at the numbers, and basically what it shows is that survival rates for the vaccinated and unvaccinated make little difference as each passing day goes by. No 32-year-old in good health, no 32-year-old, unless he's got the most extraordinary underlying conditions, needed to take that vaccine. It's time to man up and stop following the groupthink media. Stop following all the pseudo-butch types. Good morning, Britain. Oh, yes, yes, yes. We need another lockdown. Need to have a big 3-month lockdown. Oh, suddenly inflation's back. Why aren't you doing anything about that? The pseudo-butch media is going to get you killed. OK, as we've discussed with Viscount Ridley on this show, we still don't know for certain the origin of COVID-19. That's because Chairman Xi, who unleashed this on the world, won't share the information. Even though Anthony Fauci and the US government fund the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's how clever this is. Mr. and Mrs. America in Des Moines or Cedar Rapids paid for the coronavirus research, but they don't actually get to see the results. Oh well, millions of people are dead, so we won't make that mistake again. No, actually, it's business as usual between Washington and the Chi-Com lads. The Chi-Com labs, I should say, although they are very laddish and larky when it comes to their research. Natalie Winters of the National Pulse is here. Natalie, it's incredible, but the Washington-Wuhan American-Chinese relationship is exactly the same as it was.
Yeah, it's really a new axis of evil. And even since the onset of COVID-19, American health agencies under the auspices of the federal government have continued to give million-dollar grants, not just to China-based scientific organizations, but Chinese Communist Party-run scientific organizations. This, of course, coming on the heels of the Wuhan Institute of Virology and their Chinese Communist Party overlords effectively demanding that, any samples, any of these bat coronavirus databases and genomic sequences be deleted. So no transparency going on there. But even instead of just looking forward, right, in terms of what the NIH, that's the U.S. National Institutes of Health is funding, it's also really interesting to look back in the past, because we see that the relationship between the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the United States is a lot broader than just specific, COVID-focused research with EcoHealth Alliance. They've actually been a partner of the Galveston National Laboratory, which is a taxpayer-funded lab based in Texas, since at least 2017, and some newly released documents kind of detail this relationship, and really in a concerning light.
Hello, Natalie, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear us, Natalie?
Maybe it's China.
Okay, that's
Yes.
great. We lost you for a moment. Just what I think is so ridiculous is basically every private lab in China isn't a private lab as that would be understood in America or Britain or Europe or wherever. Every so-called lab is basically under the control of the Chinese communists. So if you enter into a joint program, you're entering into a program with the highest levels of the Communist Party, aren't you?
You're exactly correct. And it's not even just labs. It's really any company, any business that resides in China. Article 7 of China's National Intelligence Law stipulates that really any aspect of the country, all the way from scientific laboratories to just a run-of-the-mill company, can effectively be requisitioned by the state, by the Chinese Communist Party to help boost their ends, whatever that may be, whether that's collaborating and sharing data on users on an app such as TikTok, or even companies like Alibaba being used to kind of expand Chinese Communist Party economic hegemony. But I think you see it most concerningly when it comes to biological research in laboratories, because there is such a fusion of military and civil science going on at these laboratories, not just in terms of the research that they're doing, which if you read archives from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, you can see they were explicitly trying to find viruses that were capable of direct human infection. But the people running these laboratories, 9 times out of 10, have some military linkages in their credentials, on their resumes. And, you know, with the way the Chinese Communist Party works, those ties don't just dissolve because you move institution to institution. It's part of a very broad-scale effort to really overtake the West. So the fact that taxpayer dollars from any country in the West are funding these Chinese Communist Party labs really is baffling if you understand the Chinese Communist Party to be the existential threat that it is, not climate change, not global warming. But it seems that these people haven't learned their lesson, because they're still sending a ton of money to these Chinese Communist Party run labs.
Absolutely disgraceful that this corrupt and compromised public health establishment in Washington hasn't actually changed its modus operandi. I mean, the WHO decided to increase the number of victims of COVID to 15 million today. 15 million dead worldwide through COVID and related matters. If you accept for a moment that phony baloney number is true, it's absolutely incredible that Fauci is still getting away with sending US tax dollars to the Wuhan Institute and similar facilities. Thank you very much, Natalie. We appreciate you joining us today. Stump the Steyn is looming. You can email me, tweet me, ask me anything. And also, ladies and gentlemen, 2 words. Ted Nugent, coming right up.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ted Nugent is a rock and roll legend, spectacular career. He's had only 2 setbacks. I once sang one of his songs, Cat Scratch Fever, and me covering one of your classic rock hits is not something that should happen to any self-respecting rock colossus. The other setback, well, I'm not sure if it's a setback, but Ted Nugent has unusual views for a pop culture celebrity, and it's got him into scraps with many fellow rockers. He has a new album out, Detroit Muscle.
Everybody loves the American campfire. Don't you hear it calling your name? Everybody loves the American campfire. Don't you hear it calling your name? Everybody loves the American campfire.
Everybody loves the American campfire. Don't you hear it calling your name? We're calling Ted Nugent. It's great to see you, Ted. That's a fantastic idea for a song, and I don't know why nobody got to it 60, 70, 130 years ago. How did you come up with it?
Well, Mark, greetings and a big ditto, 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 ditto to your crowbar of truth, logic, and common sense in jolly old England. I know you're covering for me there. And we, the people, and everybody who has goodwill and decency, we thank you and salute you. But the American campfire is part of that response. My entire 74 years has been optimized, and the quality of life comes from family campfires, especially with the neighbors and the friends and our hunting buddies. So every year of my life, I've had numerous campfires. And over the last few years, I've increased that to hundreds of campfires every year, and it's a real open, loving setting where people are uninhibited and unvented and honest and cocky, especially really cocky around a campfire. So that's very positive.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if it isn't becoming more like an American bonfire where there's actually the country's dividing into 2 warring camps. And in fact, one of them at least would like to burn down the whole country. You are unusual in that most people in the music business have, conventional lefty world views. It pretends to be countercultural and radical and transgressive, but in fact they're sort of cringe-making kiss-ups for the most part.
Well, once again, people are always stopping me on the street and go, "Hey, Uncle Ted, I love your political views." And I go, "They're not views. They're self-evident truths. It's the Constitution, the Bill of Rights." I don't have any views except that I really like those truths. Point is that,
right.
But my real, Mark, I know you love the sonic bombast and the groove of my Motown Funk Brothers grind, but my real talent is that I can speak to both sides. I can speak truth, logic, and common sense to the constitutionalists, and I also speak the left language, and it goes like this. Bah, bah, bah. And they're really embarrassing because they're really stupid.
Now you love well. It starts with that. You love your country, and that comes through to the point where this album is all your own songs, and then you go down the track listing and you come to the Star Spangled Banner, and so you have this killer rock version of the Star Spangled Banner that you do.
Well, I've been really honored and humbled to be invited into the most important campfires, literally speaking, and figuratively many times, of the American families who have sacrificed their sons and daughters for the Constitution, where they run into the firefight and give up everything. I've saluted way too many flag-draped coffins, and I've done a lot of Donald Trump rallies because everything he did was good for America and good for the world, except for the bloodsuckers. They don't like Donald Trump. And when I perform a national anthem for the actual origins of the experiment in self-government, it's very, very emotional. And I might want to take advantage of your airtime here, Mark, to apologize to the world that American self-inflicted curse of apathy has created this horrible embarrassment that is spearheaded by a Joe Biden punk, and that we're ruining everything we're touching. But there is a groundswell of patriots and truth, logic, and common sense American families that I think we're going to have a bloodbath, politically speaking, of course. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but we're going to have a constitutional win in the midterms here, because everything the Democrats have touched have absolutely been destroyed. And we can go down the list, but once again, a salute to you, because you share that list of atrocities committed by all these untrustworthy bureaucracies and this untrustworthy government in America right now. It's an absolute crime and an embarrassment, and we the people are rising up, and we're gonna fix this mess.
Why do you think so many of your fellow musicians just think you should only have one view of things? I mean, you've gotten into a spat with Joan Jett, and I can't remember now whether it was Neil Young or one of the other fellas, the Crosby, Stills, Nash guys. But you're always getting into arguments with them. I wondered if you thought it had actually hurt you. You know, that you would have had awards. If you'd been over here, you'd be like Sir Elton and Sir Paul McCartney and all these guys. They'd have given you a knighthood if only you'd fallen into line with all the right views.
Well, let's just concentrate on this recent joke with Joan Jett. All I did in an interview was praise her. I saluted her and thanked her for her killer world-class garage band music. She's a world-class entertainment. She's awesome, but she doesn't belong on the world's greatest guitar player list with Joni Mitchell before Derek St. Holmes or Ricky Medlock or Mark Farner. I never even mentioned me. Let's pretend I play keyboards for a minute. Boy, you want to fantasize. But there's some killer guitar players that just soar above the Joan Jetts. And again, I love her. But what was her typical response? To attack me with hate and lies after I praised her and thanked her. But that's a synopsis of what goes on in my life. I make a positive, honest, fact-gushing comment. Always keep it positive, and the other side just lose what's left of their mind. But I'm going to tell you, I'll summarize it by telling you, the reason I don't get along with those people is because they believe they're comfortably numb, which is actually uncomfortably dumb. They have no working brain cells, and my smarts and my honesty offend them. My spirit irritates their demons, shall we say.
Around about this time of year, I always get emails from people who are disgusted that that you're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I can't even. I looked it up and I saw that. I think they're putting in Lionel Richie, who rocks about as hard as the Partridge Family. So I wondered if that actually has come to. You're just used to that. You say, I don't want to be in any museum with Lionel Richie and these other fellas. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think, once again, Mark, that can be summarized with the great, honest, smart, talented Dolly Parton said when they tried to induct her into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She had to remind the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, hey, you dirtbags, I'm not rock and roll. And at least she was honest enough to say that. But God bless Lionel Richie, and I guess God bless Grandmaster Flash. I don't think God will bless him, but somebody might. But you've got to keep rock and roll integrity based on Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and James Brown and Wilson Pickett and the Motown Funk Brothers, not Patti Smith and Madonna. I mean, why don't we just go down to Chuck Berry's grave and piss on it? They're just being dishonest. Now, let's take me out of the equation. It's not sour grapes. I'm having the greatest musical time of my life, and there's no problem with that. But they should be respectful and honest to those founding fathers of real rock and roll.
Oh no, I loved Chuck Berry. In fact, the best version of Johnny Be Good I've ever heard was you singing it down the telephone to me. And you down a bad telephone line rocked more authentically than half these people they're sticking in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which apparently requires government subsidy. So you shouldn't want to be in there on constitutional grounds aside from anything else. Thank you very much, Ted Nugent. It's great to see you. Answer me this quick question. Is it Detroit muscle or Detroit muscle? I don't want to be the pansy foreigner and get it wrong. Detroit muscle, Detroit muscle.
Detroit muscle. Detroit Muscle, the mighty Motor City, more horsepower and more rock and roll authority.
Okay, Detroit Muscle. Thank you very much, Ted. That's the best I can do. Thank you very much, Ted Nugent. I'm not as bad as Lionel Richie on the old rock and roll vocal energy, but I'm getting close to it. Let's close it out with a bit of... have we got time for a bit of stunning? Oh, yes. Do you think that certain world governments are trying to destroy the middle class and create a state-dependent society? Yeah, because all the jobs are going to be automated. Nobody needs citizens. So if you turn individual citizens into dependents of big government, that solves that problem. Ian says, do you think if historic tyrants had received diversity training in their early lives, the world would now be a better place? Well, actually, I would just like to see Hitler, Stalin and Chairman Mao have to go into sensitivity training classes just because it would drive them bonkers. That'll do it. Never fear, Dan Wootton is here to thump your Thursday. Stay safe, stay free.
Hi there. Increasingly cloudy in the north with outbreaks of rains pushing south, but drier further south during the next 24 hours and warm in the southeast on Friday ahead of the rain. The weather fronts that are bringing the rain have brought some damp weather to the far northwest of Scotland during Thursday and a lot of cloud for Northern Ireland and Scotland. But overnight we'll see even wetter weather arrive for western Scotland. That arrives by midnight and then eventually that reaches much